Hello, my name's Linda, and working with my husband Dennis, we've been spending the last 2 years preserving the history and heritage of the Croft. Here are some memories that people have of back in the 1950s and 60s when they were young and Charlie Watts the baker was still here baking bread in the Croft, which was the Old Town Bakery. Carry on listening to find out more and how they share their memories of those happy days.
Charlie Watts was one of a number of characters when I was growing up around Wootton Bassett. We don't seem to have time for the characters today, but he was known as the midnight baker to the family, and the reason being my grandmother, who lived in Bath Road, left the side door open and the back window to the kitchen open so that Charlie could put the bread in and it would be ready for them in the morning. There was one time I remember Charlie spoke to my father. He called him Leonard. Leonard, he said, "I'm very sorry about your mother. She says she's going to cancel my bread order." And Dad said, "Well, there must have been a reason for that, Charlie." "Yeah, she says it's because I haven't collected the money for 12 months.
I have many memories of Charlie and Dolly Watts. I was a child of approximately 8 years old, and my father owned Maslin's shop, and the house next door, where now the Gelder Rose is, was my grandma's garden, a house and garden. And we used to come and play in the garden. And every time we used to be out in the garden, Charlie Watts used to hear us, you see, me and my sister Susan. And we would poke our heads above the wall where the bakehouse door is now the push bar to open exit door. That was his bakehouse door. And he would come out and he would say, "This one, Nobby." And we would say, "Yes, please." And he would come out with a knot of dough made into a very small, like a bread roll. And he would lather it with butter, so thick. It was lovely. And he used to do that every time we came to Granny's garden. Next door to Charlie Watts's bakehouse, where he lived with his sister Dolly, she had a little shop, noted for its sweet shop and groceries and things like that. And when we were little children, we used to come in, and she had a piece of paper on the oak counter where she used to make it into like a cone, and then tip the sweets in when you had 2 ounces of humbugs or whatever, and she would twist the top, and that was your bag.
My friend used to live down in Wood Street. As a little girl, she used to come into the shop. There was a bakery then, with the groceries and sweets at the front. She was fascinated when she saw Charlie, the baker, putting the bread in the oven on the big paddle. Dolly worked in the shop. She was Charlie's sister. There were sacks of flour and sugar on the floor. She used to scoop out what people wanted and weigh it on her big scales. That's just one of the memories my friend shared.
As a boy of 14 years of age, I worked there as a baker's delivery boy. I used to go from school at the age of 14, straight away from school, and Charlie would always greet me saying something like, "Hello, Keith, have a glass of cider." And he kept the cider in a little alcove alongside the oven, so it was always warm, usually served in a fairly dirty glass. And I would drink this cider and then go and shovel some coal from the coal store at the back of the bakery into a bunker from which Charlie would shovel the coal into the ovens whenever he was ready. And my job after that was to clean the baking tins, which I did, and then usually take freshly baked bread and load it into the delivery vehicle, which was a tradesman's bicycle with not a basket, but a Kellogg's cornflake outer carton on the front. I would load that with this glass of cider inside me, cycle off down and do my deliveries around Wootton Bassett twice a week. I would also work in the evenings with Charlie in his Jowett van around Wootton Bassett, helping him deliver bread. He was a bit of a chatterbox, so it was a long job, and oftentimes he would be delivering bread as late as 11 o'clock at night. So he was affectionately known as the Midnight Baker. He used to dismiss me, by the way, before 9 o'clock, as I was quite young then. I progressed from that tradesman's bicycle to a tricycle with a box on the front to sort of stop me and buy one thing, which I then used to ride around Wootton Bassett in, delivering the bread. Charlie made several varieties of bread, the ordinary tin loaf, what it was called a cottage loaf, and the twist loaf. And he was well known for these breads in Wootton Bassett, and the bread was well liked by everybody, and I think was a favourite. Not always baked in the cleanest of conditions, I might add. Loaves of bread that I referred to were like what we call today a bloomer, but twisted in shape, and were always baked with a cabbage leaf on top of them. Charlie used to grow the cabbages himself on an allotment, which is now, or on the land which is now the church hall, and he kept pigs there as well. So he would feed the pigs, and on his way back from the piggery, would pick the cabbage leaves ready to put onto the twist loaf prior to it going into the oven. I doubt if he ever washed the loaves or even his hands at the time. But the bread was reckoned to be the best in town. Charlie was a character. He worked in the bakery. His sister Dolly kept the shop in the front, and either she or Charlie's wife used to give me a cup of tea as well as a glass of cider before I went out on my rounds.
My memories of Charlie Watts, who was the Bassett baker for many, many years, from my childhood mostly. I did know him as Charlie, and as kids we made his life a little bit of hell, I think, with knocking on the windows, and he'd come running out with his copper stick and chase us and shouting down the road. I won't tell you what he said, but perhaps that would be edited out. But he never did catch us, but there was always a twinkle in his eye and always a laughter at the end of his chase. He was, as I say, one of the original Bassett bakers, and he had a little three-wheeler van which he kept in the coach house, which was right opposite the croft, which he used to deliver the bread in all out round Broadtown, all the way through Bassett itself. And they called him the Midnight Baker because you'd wake up in the morning and find the bread on the doorstep. And very rarely he would collect the money. So how he managed to exist, I do not know. But he was a lovely chap. In latter years, when the shop was sold, he moved down to Church Street, down to number 29, so Church Street, and he lived there with his wife for many years. But he worked for the Co-op Bakery, which was right opposite the station in Swindon, for a number of years before he retired fully. But they recalled him when he was 70 years old. And he used to then go in, and I am happy to say we didn't buy bread for the length of time he worked there, because we woke up in the morning and outside the front door was a Hessian sack filled with every loaf you could wish to have. What we didn't eat and the neighbours didn't eat, the fowls ate, which we had up the back garden. But Charlie, and his wife. I didn't know Mrs. Watts very well, but I knew his sister Dolly, who ran the sweet side of the Croft in those days, with the shop, and she was the matchmaker of the town, who would suit different people to different the males to the females. She was also she'd read your palm, and she looked for 4-leaf clovers, I should say, down through the allotments and all through the fields, always wearing her straw hat. She was a lovely person as well. Charlie, as I say, lived down at number 29, and the outside cars that were always down on that terrace of houses, he converted into a little, well, it wasn't a garden shed as such. It was more a rest room, whereby he had his 9-gallon of cider, rough cider, of course, which he always put a pint of rum into the top of. And he'd be there with his bread and cheese and his onion, and he'd sit there with his sister, Dolly, and they'd be drinking out of this 9-gallon barrel, which I was asked by him if I'd like a drop of it. He tried to entice me, but I'm sorry to say I was not in that league. I stayed out of that altogether. That's my memories of Charlie, and God rest his soul.